Piazza, and I am conducting an interview of Clara Valianti Schaeffer on November 15th, 2008. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Ms. Schaeffer, tell me, where were you born?
I was born in Baltimore, Maryland, 1922.
And where do you live now?
I live in Westminster.
When did you move to Carroll County?
We moved to Carroll County around 1924.
And when you say we, who?
My parents and 7 children. I was one of 7 children.
And why did your parents, if you know, decide to move from Baltimore to Carroll County?
Well, they drove to Carroll County on Sundays, and they fell in love with this place. It was nice, and they thought it would be a nice place to raise the children. And my dad was a tailor.
He had his own shop?
He had a shop. He opened a shop on Main Street where the telephone company is now. And that's where my younger brother was born. I had one brother that was born here in Westminster. And he was born in 1925. So therefore, I think that's when they came here. My younger brother was already born, and he was just a little baby. And then I think they had children maybe almost every year, 2 years or something like that.
Right,
but
right.
There were 7 of us.
7
anyway.
of you.
Right.
Now, I know you moved here when you were 2 years old, so you probably don't remember.
Well, I was about 3.
3 years old.
Maybe.
But when you became aware of you remember back then, what do you remember about Carroll County back then? Carroll
County was quiet. There weren't too many Italian people here, so we were fairly new, at that time. But we were welcomed, and like I say, my dad had this tailor shop, and he became known very quickly. And
was he the only tailor in town?
He was the only tailor in town. Yes. He became a tailor when he was only 12.
Oh, okay. Because he learned from his father?
No. He was in a school in Italy.
Oh, okay.
They came from Ascoli Piceno. My mother and dad were 19 and 27 when they came to Baltimore. They arrived at Ellis Island and then somehow got to Baltimore because at that time you had to have a sponsor and a job. So when they came here or came to Baltimore, they already had a job, and people found them a place to live, and they both worked in a factory on either end of the city. They weren't even together, never spoke a word of English.
Was it a textile factory?
It was a factory making suits and things.
Okay.
My mother was a buttonhole maker,
okay.
And my dad was a tailor, and that's where they worked when they first came here.
Describe Carroll County though for me back in the 20s. Were we talking, or were the dirt streets?
Yes, we had dirt streets, some brick streets. I don't remember where they were, but we did have dirt streets.
What was Main Street
And I
like?
remember horses. We used to have hitching posts. I can remember that.
On Main Street?
On Main Street. They had those there for a good while.
And was Main Street actually a dirt street back then? Or?
I think it was a dirt street, from what I remember.
So obviously it's changed a lot since then.
Oh, it's changed immensely. It has changed a lot.
But other than
some for the better, and some I would like to see the way it was.
Oh, sure.
It was very, very nice to raise children. It was a nice town. It still is nice, but it's grown so.
So your father had a tailor shop on Main Street. What other shops were there?
Well, there was a drugstore across the street, Horine's drugstore, and I remember that. And I can't remember quite much of anything else. I guess there was a clothing store, maybe, but at that time I wouldn't know.
Oh, I know, because you were young.
Yeah, didn't get out that much.
Now, did your family actually live in town?
Yes.
Okay, so
that was right downtown.
So you didn't own there was no car. You didn't own a car back then.
No, we had a car, but I don't know what kind of car it was. I remember having a car, but I don't remember what it was.
Oh, okay.
What kind of car it was.
Now, was your school in town also?
The school was right there near where we lived. That was right downtown. The church
Oh, okay.
and the school.
Do you remember the name of the school?
St. John's.
Oh, St. John's.
St.
Okay.
John's.
So the St. John's
And
School is associated with St. John's Catholic Church.
And the Catholic Church, and the convent was right there where the cemetery is.
Okay.
That's torn down now, but that's where the convent was, where the nuns lived, back in that same area.
Tell me a little bit about growing up during that period of time. There were not supermarkets back then. So,
Oh, no.
So
no. We had stores that, regular stores that we went to.
And would you shop on a daily basis for your food?
I guess they did with feeding 7 children.
Right.
My mother was a hard worker.
Yeah, that has to be a lot of, because your mother didn't, when I say she didn't work outside the home.
No,
then.
what they used to do, they used to bring the work to her.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they brought the work to her for her to make buttonholes
Okay.
so that she could take care of the children and still be able to work. There weren't very many buttonhole makers back then, and they came from other countries.
Sure. It's hard work.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, your mother's name and your father's name?
My mother's name was Josephine, and my dad's name was Vincent.
Is that the work your parents did for their entire lives?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
Now, so you went to the same school from elementary school through high school, St. John's?
I went to the same school until I was in the 8th grade,
Okay.
and then I transferred to Westminster High School. I wanted a commercial course, and we didn't have that at St. John's. It was academic. And
Now, is that the same building that Westminster High School is in today, or is it a different building?
the building that I went to school is gone.
That's gone, okay.
And the high school, when I went to public school, that was on Longwell Avenue, which is, I don't know if it's a junior high or whatever it is now. But that's where we moved there from Green Street in 1937 in our new high school.
Tell me
Or 36.
how large of a class did you have at high school, your graduating class?
Well, when I graduated, it was 116 of us. We were one of the largest classes, and we still have reunions.
Oh, you do?
We just had our 69th reunion in October
Oh, where was that held?
at the American Legion.
Oh, okay.
I organized it, and we always meet. We used to meet every 5 years, and then we thought, no, we're going to meet every year. And so every year we have a reunion.
Do many of those people still live in Carroll County?
Not too many. And I can only find people that have passed on through our newspaper, but those that live away, we don't know.
Sure.
But this last reunion, we had 25 present, but they weren't all classmates. They were spouses and guests.
Right.
But we still meet. We hope to meet next year for our 70th.
Well, that'd be great. If you
We're
could.
hoping.
Now, was there a large Italian community in Westminster in the 20s
No.
and 30s?
No.
Were you the only?
No, we weren't the only Italian people, but we would get together with the few that lived here. It wasn't very easy at that time.
Why wasn't it very easy?
Being foreign,
Okay.
it was, we didn't feel it so much because he was in business, but we just didn't have that many Italian people here.
Did you speak both Italian and English?
I hate to say that, but I never learned too much of Italian.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, they spoke to us, but they wanted to learn the English. Therefore, they talked with us, in English because they wanted to learn the English. And they did learn English. But when there were people there, of course, they spoke their own language. And we understood it. My older sisters and brothers could speak it very well. But the younger ones, We spoke a little bit. We would talk to them in Italian, but, you know, it was like our slang.
Sure.
You know, we didn't know the real words, but they understood and we understood.
Back then, during that period of time, gas lamps on the streets or anything you described for me, electricity? And
There were, I guess, gas lamps, but outhouses. We had an outhouse down there on Main Street, but that was the only time because the other places that we lived, they had everything.
Yeah, indoor plumbing.
Indoor plumbing, yes.
Okay. How about anything else you remember back then about how it was to live in Carroll County?
It was a good life. That's what I can tell you. It was a good life to be raised here in this town. There were
large farming community back then.
Nice people. We lived, later on, we lived on upper East Main Street where my dad had a tailor shop. And it was between the lawyers and doctors and one bank. And
what bank was that? Do you remember what bank that was?
Farmers Mechanics Bank, I think it was called
at
that time. And we had a store next door, Evans Brothers. It was a grocery store and a barber shop and a doctor's office, Billingsley. And we had Walsh, Huff. These are lawyers that had offices there. It was a nice neighborhood.
What would the kids back then do for fun, entertainment?
I wonder sometimes, you know, how we really got by, but we were always happy. And when you grow up in a big family, everybody does things together. We always went out together. And we learned to dance, and we did the same thing everybody else did. But our parents were rather strict, and we just couldn't get out when we wanted to.
Did the church and the school have activities that you participated in?
Well, we had plays and shows and things like that. Yes, we did. St. John's. And also when I was in high school, I was in operettas, and I never had leads or anything like that, but I was always in the chorus and dance and all that.
Was there a movie house in town?
Yes, we had Carroll Theater. And way back, we had an opera house.
Oh, where was that located?
That was down on Main Street. And they used to have shows in there. And we had a little, I guess you would call it a little candy store or something my oldest sister used to run. And it was right in the same building.
As the opera house?
At the opera house. And there was a large window there that when they had the shows, we could open this window and watch the shows.
Oh, so that was your free way. That was your free way of watching the shows.
We saw all of them, whatever they were.
How long was the opera house there for?
What was it?
How long was it there for?
How long? It was there a long time. It's still there. The building's still there.
Oh, the building is, but they stopped doing operas.
No, they don't have. I don't know what they have in there now.
Okay. But
it was a nice place. I don't know what year that was that we had the store. But I know we all went there.
And your sister owned the candy store?
Well, she run the store.
Okay.
Yeah, she was the oldest, and she was only about 18, something like that, 17, 18. But we were all there. And then there was a factory up above, and they used to have like lunches for them, like hot dogs and things like that at lunchtime.
Oh, what kind of factory was that?
It was I think it was a pants factory. I'm not sure.
Did any of your family work there?
No, no.
Now, when World War II came around, did any of your brothers actually serve in? Four your brothers?
4 of them, all of them. My oldest brother was in the Army. My 3 brothers were in the Navy, and my husband was in the Marines at that time.
Are any of your brothers still alive?
One. I only have one brother left.
And he was in World War II?
Yes.
Does he still live in Carroll County?
Yes. I wish you could interview him. He probably has more to say than I do.
Well, what's his name?
And I almost had him come with me, but I didn't want to, suggest that. But he would be a good one to talk to.
And what's his name?
Romeo.
And his last name?
Valianti.
And he's the one that served in the Army?
He served in the Navy.
Oh, Navy.
Yes. He was on a repair ship, and my one brother was on destroyer escort. I don't know the names of the ships. And my other brother, my youngest brother, I don't know what he was into, but when they were ready to send him overseas, they noticed that he was limping. He had one short leg because he had a broken leg when he was little. So they discharged him, honorably discharged, and he came home. And my older brother, when they took him, he was old to begin with. He was in his 30s, and they discharged him. So those two came home early, but the other two were in a long time.
So your other brothers, they all survived the war?
Yes, thank goodness for that. And the one that's still living was in there longer than anybody.
So I jumped right over the Depression. So let's talk about the Depression. How did the Depression affect you and your family?
Truthfully, I don't think we ever noticed it. My parents we never heard them talk about anything that they couldn't do or we couldn't do. I mean, they just never talked about it.
Did you grow your own vegetables and that type of thing?
Well, we had some, but my mother was a good cook, and of course she cooked, and we had everything that we needed to have. Basic things, material things didn't matter to us, but we had a good home and good parents, clothes that other people didn't have because they made our clothes. My mother was a seamstress, and Dad being a tailor. My brothers had suits when nobody else had suits. And so we had everything that we needed to have. And my brother and I often talk about it, that we never heard our parents worry about money, or if they did, they never said anything in front of us.
So if your father's business was affected as a result of the Depression, you wouldn't have known it back then?
No.
Let me just, back then too, just toys. Nowadays, there's commercial toys, there's all these toys you buy. Did you make your own toys, or how?
We had toys, we had some toys, but we would get one big toy, and then other things were clothes and things like that.
That your parents made?
Made, yes. And my older brother would always have the tree up and all that kind of thing for the little ones. And like I say, it seemed like we just all worked together.
How about going back to World War II again? I mean, all the rationing that took place during the war.
We had rations. We had to have those little stamps. We had rations.
How did that affect your family?
I can't remember ever suffering with the loss of anything. I can't remember that, and I don't think we did. We had everything we needed to have.
Ma'am, did you go to school after high school? Did you go to any college?
No.
Now, you said you got married. When did you get married?
I got married in '42.
So
I was married when my husband went in service.
Okay. And he survived the war also?
Yes, yes. We were married well, I graduated out of high school in '39. Back then, you were 16 going on 17 because we only had 7-4 plan. And so we were young, but I was 19, he was 21.
And when were you working outside the home at any time?
Yes, I worked along with my mother in a factory. It's the only place she'd allow the girls to work.
Now, what factory was that?
It was downtown at Hartz's. It was called Hartz's. His name was Hartz. And we had to learn to make buttonholes like she did. But I didn't like it too much. I just didn't like it. My two sisters were good at it, but I wanted to work on a machine.
Okay.
Zoom, I wanted to do that.
Were you able to do that?
So I was able to do that, yes. They had me working on a machine. But then after that, I worked in a defense plant, Congolium.
Oh, where was that located?
That was down Cedarhurst. They made rockets.
You worked there during the war?
During the war.
Okay.
I was an inspector.
Oh, you inspected the rockets?
I had to inspect the inside of the rocket after the guys painted them in there,
That doesn't sound too safe, was it?
It was okay, I guess.
Okay.
It was interesting.
And when the war ended, you stopped working there?
Of course. I
Right.
stopped working there before he came home.
And did you work after that?
No, we wanted to raise a family. We didn't have any family. And I was still living at home. I lived with my mom then because my dad passed away in February. When everybody was coming home, they came home like in December and in January. I think the last brother came home in February because he missed seeing his dad, you know.
February of 1945.
45, yes. And my dad died in 46. My dad died in 46.
Oh, a year after that.
Year after.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where did your husband work? And your husband's name also?
My husband worked at Burroughs. He was he repaired adding machines and typewriters.
What type of business was Burroughs?
Typewriters and adding machines.
Okay. Where was that
Business
located?
machines in Baltimore.
Oh, it's Baltimore. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But you remained living in Carroll County.
I still lived at home because we didn't have a car, and my husband had to get a room in Baltimore to work. He traveled streetcars, carrying his tool bag, and so until we could get a car, you just couldn't buy one. And then Ford, well, Burroughs had a fleet agreement with Ford, and so we got our first Ford in 1947. So we were without a car for 2 years, and he would come home on weekends.
So for him to get from Carroll County to Baltimore, he would use streetcars?
Well, he would go to Baltimore on the bus or however he would go and then stay there. He had a room on Baltimore Street, and then he'd travel streetcars from job to job.
So there actually was a bus system from Carroll County to Baltimore back
well,
then.
there was a bus. There was a bus that you could go.
Did he just tell me about so then you eventually had 4 children?
I had the first child in 1946, December 1st. She'll be 62.
And now were your children educated in Carroll County?
In Carroll County, they went to St. John's. 3 of them graduated from St. John's, and the one boy went to the 8th grade, and he liked sports. So we didn't have sports at St. John's, so he went to Westminster High School, and he was a punter and a quarterback. He did very well. He got a 4-year scholarship to Villanova from that. Graduated from Villanova.
Do your children still live in Carroll County?
No, none of them live in Carroll County, but they're not too far away.
So then you've been here ever since then, in sort of the 50s and 60s and 70s?
I still live in the same house.
Oh, you still live in the same house?
5 years.
Oh, okay.
When we moved from one place to another when he was transferred from Baltimore to Frederick, and then when he was transferred back to Baltimore, well, I didn't want to raise the kids in Baltimore, so we decided to come back to Westminster because he was born in Carroll County, my husband was. And so we decided to build a house here, and I've been there ever since.
What are the major changes that you've seen since you've been living in Carroll County?
Major changes? Well, there's a lot of changes. You know, we have shopping malls now, which we didn't have. We have grocery stores all over the place that we didn't have. There was an MP store, and what was the other one? That's what we used to have. But now we have all kinds of stores. It's just built up like that. And more houses and apartments, and it's grown a lot.
But you still live here, so you must like it.
I love it here.
And why do you love it so much?
I guess because I might as well say I was born here, you know, because I was just a little child when I moved here. And all my friends are here that are still here, like me. But I just don't want to move anywhere. I'm satisfied to stay here. But my children don't live too far. I have one that lives in Hanover, one in Severna Park, one in Ellicott City, and one in Mount Airy. But I see them on Sunday morning for breakfast.
Oh, that's
most of them, when they get there, my one daughter stops and gets me, and so then we go to breakfast. They take me out to breakfast. They've done that ever since her dad died. He's been gone 24 years.
Let me go back because before we started this, you indicated that the original church, St. John's, is no longer there. Is no longer St. John's.
No,
it's no longer there. What happened to it?
well, they had to tear it down because the steeple was damaged due to a storm, and I guess it was unsafe. I don't know. It was a beautiful church.
Do you know when that happened? About what time that happened?
I'm not sure what year that was. I can't remember that.
Was it before you were married?
No, we were married because I think I was living in Frederick at that time when that happened. And the school was still there, so that was all torn down to put that library there. The library's there now.
Oh, okay. So
that's
where
the
all
library
that
was.
That's where that was. Oh, okay.
Yeah, the rectory was there, where the priests were, and the school. And the convent, as I told you, was back of the graveyard.
And that went away when the church went away also.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of times ethnic communities move together in the same areas. Did the Italian community grow in Carroll County?
No, they were in their own place. Everybody had their own families, and I think when you have families, you don't, Now, we had friends from Baltimore that used to come to visit when we lived on Main Street when we first came here, and they kept in contact with them. But that soon, left them too. I guess transportation was hard and whatever it was. But when you start raising a family, your life is changed. Sure. You're devoted to your family. And they certainly were, my parents. And that's all we had. We didn't have aunts and uncles. They were all in Italy.
Oh, okay.
And my dad died when he was 56. And his mom was still living in Italy. And they didn't tell her that he died. She lived to be 94.
Well, Ms. Schaeffer, I appreciate you coming down today. Thank you for talking to us about your
Well, I
life.
didn't know what I was going to be able to say or, what I remember. I remember quite a bit, but I don't remember, some things that probably are more important to remember.
Well, I appreciate it, ma'am, and you've explained a lot of things that happened since the 20s in Carroll County. I do appreciate it.
Well, like I say, Carroll County is a wonderful place to raise a family. And then I raised my family. And then, of course, when they left the nest, they had to do what they had to do, And they all graduated nicely, and they went to college. My son was also a Marine for 4 years, and then he went to Catholic U and graduated from there as an engineer. I have 7 grandchildren, 6 boys and 1 girl.
Oh, okay.
And 1 girl. And I have 2 great-grandchildren.
Oh, congratulations.
So I have a lot to be thankful for. I feel very blessed. Losing my husband wasn't a good thing, but I had 42 years with him, and I thank the good Lord for those 42 years and my wonderful children that I have. I couldn't be more blessed.
Well, I thank you for coming here today.
You're welcome.